In 1967, the undefeated heavyweight champion of the world received a sudden mandate. He lost his championship title. The state revoked his boxing license. A federal court sentenced him to 5 years in prison. This man was systematically dismantled by the American legal and political machine. To understand the friction that triggered this courtroom conviction, we have to look back to the streets where his fight began. In 1942, Cassius Marcellus Clay Jr. was born in Louisville, Kentucky. He grew up in a working-class neighborhood bounded by strict racial divides. When he was 12 years old, someone stole his prized red bicycle. Furious and in tears, he told anyone who would listen that he was going to find the thief and beat him up. A local police officer named Joe Martin happened to overhear him. Martin, who also ran a boxing gym in a local basement, offered the angry kid a piece of advice. He needed to learn how to fight properly before confronting anybody. The gym in that basement was simple, but it gave the 12-year-old a place to channel his anger. He began training every day after school, turning the frustration of a stolen bike into the discipline required for the ring. Clay trained with singular focus, waking up before dawn to run the streets of Louisville. His hand speed carried him through the amateur ranks, eventually landing him a spot on the American team at the 1960 Olympic Games in Rome. He dominated international opponents with a style of movement that heavyweights rarely possessed. He won the gold medal for the United States, wearing the award around his neck with immense national pride. But that pride fractured the moment he returned home. While wearing his Olympic gold medal, he walked into a local restaurant where the staff flatly refused to serve him. He had returned to an America governed by segregation. The law explicitly separated black and white citizens across restaurants, schools, and public spaces, enforcing a rigid racial hierarchy in every aspect of daily life. The restaurant incident signaled a hard reality. Even the highest levels of athletic achievement for the United States did not guarantee him basic human dignity under the existing legal system. He turned professional and immediately discarded the script of the humble athlete. He became loud, boasting about his looks, and predicting the exact rounds his opponents would fall. By 1964, he earned a shot at the heavyweight championship. Standing across from him was Sonny Liston, a physically imposing champion who relied on intimidating opponents before the opening bell even rang. But the young challenger exhausted Liston with speed and footwork, forcing the champion to quit on his stool. At 22 years old, he claimed the heavyweight title. Days later, he held a press conference that shocked the sporting establishment. He announced his alignment with the Nation of Islam and discarded the name Cassius Clay, declaring it a label tied to his ancestors' enslavement. His new name was Muhammad Ali. He demanded the press and the public use it, turning the simple act of naming into a public assertion of his religious and cultural identity. In 1967, the U.S. government drafted him into the Vietnam War. Ali refused to step forward at the induction center. He cited his Islamic faith and questioned the ethics of fighting a war abroad while his own people faced systemic oppression at home. By 1967, the federal government viewed Ali as a high-profile dissenter rather than a sports figure. His refusal to enter the draft challenged the state's authority during a period of domestic turmoil, leading the legal system to pursue a conviction that would separate him from his platform. The retaliation was swift. Authorities stripped his championship belt and pulled his boxing license. As this chart shows, his professional activity flatlined. He lost 3.5 years of his athletic prime, the critical window between ages 25 and 28, waiting for his prison appeal. Exiled from the ring, he took his message to college campuses. He toured universities across the country, speaking against the war and advocating for civil rights, shifting his public role from a prizefighter to a speaker for a generation of dissenters. In 1971, the Supreme Court unanimously overturned his draft conviction. The threat of prison vanished, and he was legally cleared to return to professional boxing. The climb back to the top culminated in 1974. He traveled to Zaire, Africa, to face the new, younger champion, George Foreman, in a match known as the Rumble in the Jungle. Ali leaned back against the ropes round after round, letting Foreman empty his tank by throwing heavy punches into his defensive guard. When Foreman was completely exhausted, Ali went on the offensive and secured the knockout. Winning in Zaire completed a journey that few thought possible when he was exiled in 1967. 7 years after the government stripped him of his title, he was once again the heavyweight champion of the world. Taking punches from the world's strongest heavyweights carried a biological cost. In the 1980s, doctors diagnosed Ali with Parkinson's disease, a degenerative brain condition. The condition steadily affected his motor skills and quieted his once sharp voice. Yet he continued to travel as a global humanitarian, using his presence to support international aid efforts. At the 1996 Olympic Games in Atlanta, a visibly shaking Ali stepped out of the shadows to light the Olympic torch. The stadium filled with an emotional response from an audience of thousands. The man standing at the top of that stadium was now a symbol of national resilience. 30 years earlier, the same country had convicted him as a criminal and attempted to end his career. Ali's legacy is ultimately tied to the choice he made in 1967. By forfeiting his titles and his peak years for a matter as principle, he redefined what it meant for an athlete to use their platform on the world stage.